What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 46 of the Halving Report podcast with myself, your host, Brad Mines. Bitcoin has experienced its third block reward halving on May 11th, 2020. We've been experiencing an explosion of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency prices ever since. There are still well over 1,000 days until we see the next Bitcoin halving. As of Saturday, March 20th, the price of Bitcoin sits just under 60,000 US dollars and about 74,000 Canadian dollars. We can't overstate how important today's guest has been to the development of Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency ecosystem. Roger Ver is the founder and CEO of Bitcoin.com, which was one of the largest ever domain purchases in history. Roger is a Bitcoin OG that now promotes Bitcoin Cash to accommodate the fast, low-fee user experience Bitcoin once offered on its base layer. His modern narrative of Bitcoin, the very first and most popular cryptocurrency, combined with his OG status, make him a controversial figure to say the least. Let's get to the interview. So I was researching you a lot prior to the show, of course, and you've been involved with so many different things. Most notably, you've helped build a crypto ecosystem from the early stages of Bitcoin. So I want to start by asking you, what are some of the things you've done in your life, business and personal, that you're most proud of?
The thing I probably had the biggest impact on the world with is seeding the cryptocurrency ecosystem there and helping get things started. I've been involved more than a decade now and helped provide the seed money or helped start companies like BitPay and blockchain.com and bitcoin.com, of course, Kraken and purse.io and a whole bunch of other ones out there, more than I can even count at this point. So it's really amazing. I remember when I was first telling other people about Bitcoin, they were still less than $1. And people back then were really, really skeptical. They're like, well, why would anybody ever use this? But, I knew people were going to start using it as money. And, I had felt the pain of dealing with the PayPals and the banks of the world, and what a giant headache it was dealing with those things to do any sort of international or e-commerce stuff. And Bitcoin solved all of those problems. So there was no doubt in my mind that it was going to wind up being really popular all over the world. And here we are today. Cryptocurrency is a worldwide phenomenon. Where everyone's talking about it everywhere, from CNN to the local coffee shop.
Yeah, so it must be so exciting for you for being in from the very beginning of this time, and what I wish to have crossed paths with you at those $1 times, right? What now you reside in Antigua, if I'm not mistaken now, and I just wanted to ask you, why did you decide to reside there? And is it difficult for residents to make long-term stays there and acquire citizenship?
So there's another YouTube channel I'm a big fan of. It's called The Nomad Capitalist, and the slogan they have over there is to go where you're treated best. And I think that's just a fantastic rule to live by, is go anywhere in the world where you're going to be treated the best. And a big chunk of this year I was in Antigua because I was getting treated really well there. They didn't have any lockdowns. The restaurants were open, like life was pretty good. And then a couple of months ago, they kind of locked down the whole country and forced every restaurant to close and everything else. So I'm no longer in Antigua. I'm in a different island nearby where life is fantastic and the restaurants are open and very little, no lockdown at all. You can stay out as late as you want at night if you want to. And so that's a great thing. But Antigua has been good to me as well. And maybe I'll go back there at some point if they get rid of their lockdowns. But go anywhere in the world that is going to treat you well. And I really like that slogan. And Antigua is fun because you can become a citizen there very quickly and pay for the entire citizenship process in Bitcoin Cash as well. People that are interested in that can visit antiguahelp.com and get all the details on that. And I've done that as well. So now actually I have an Antiguan passport as well as St. Kitts.
Right. So you can purchase your Antigua citizenship with Bitcoin Cash. How much does that cost? And is there any?
Looking at about $125,000 for a single person worth of Bitcoin Cash. And it's not that much more if you have a whole family. So I think you can do a family of up to 6 for like $150,000 or something like that.
Wow.
And you can do that all, fast, easy, cheap, and reliable. That's what people like. And with the Antiguan passport, you can go to all of Europe, all of South America, and most of Asia without a visa. So it's a pretty strong passport as well. And if you go and visit Antigua in person too, you can spend Bitcoin Cash just about everywhere, at a gas station, supermarket, just about every restaurant in the country. It's really fun seeing just how much adoption we got going in Antigua until all the restaurants closed. So I guess you can't spend it in any of the restaurants at the moment. But actually, they're open. They're allowed to be open for takeout, so you can still use it for takeout there. But I'm looking forward to it becoming a cryptocurrency destination spot once the world reopens for that sort of travel.
Now, it seems like a lot of the first world countries have already been in lockdown for quite some time, but you're saying Antigua has just come into lockdown now. So have COVID numbers risen there rapidly lately, or what's happening there?
And they rose a bit, and then I think there's probably some international pressure as well. And I can't really speak to it, but what I'll tell you what I did do as soon as they locked down the country and they gave a 6 p.m. curfew and every restaurant had to close,
Hmm.
I left. So I'm
Right.
I'm not in Antigua anymore. I'm
Mhm.
in St. Bart's, which is another fantastic island nearby.
Okay, cool. Now, America has often been touted as the land of the free and a country where many people around the world historically have come for opportunity. You, on the other hand, have renounced your U.S. citizenship and have taken a different journey. Can you explain, what triggered you to renounce your citizenship and maybe some of the pros and cons of that?
Yeah, and renouncing your U.S. citizenship is probably about the most American thing you can possibly do. If you look at the origin of America, everybody living there used to be part of the United Kingdom. And they said, you know what? We don't like the rules and regulations and the oppressiveness that you guys are engaging in. So we're out of here. We're not going to be British anymore. We're not going to be American. And so I did the exact same thing that the original Americans did. The U.S. government today is really oppressive and doing all sorts of horrible things and tossing people in jail for almost no reason and dropping bombs on people around the world.
Hmm.
I don't need that in my life. I chose to leave, just like the original Americans did. So, and
Hmm.
was people ask me a lot, like, do you regret having renounced your U.S. citizenship? And I tell people, yeah, I regret it a lot. I regret that I didn't do it earlier. I should have done it much earlier in my life. That's my only regret. And it's a great big giant world
Hmm.
out there, filled with smart, interesting
Hmm.
people. And if you go out, you should go out there and meet them and experience a bit because I don't know if you're Canadian yourself. I see you're wearing a Canadian hat there, but
You got it.
there's more to the world than Canada. There's more to the
Hmm.
world than the U.S. There's more to the world than wherever you just
Hmm.
happen to be born by luck of the draw. So go out there and
Hmm.
see it.
Hmm. Certainly, and although I'm wearing a Canada hat, I'm certainly not a nationalist at any point. I'm very much consider myself a global citizen, and I'm, I hope I wish for a world with no borders where people can travel freely. Like, you're a well-traveled person. You obviously have chosen Antigua, but what are some of the most crypto-friendly countries or other places that kind of spark your interest as well?
And Antigua is definitely one of them. Another one is Slovenia. If you go to Slovenia, and for most Americans, and I assume Canadians, they hear Slovenia and they imagine, former Soviet bloc with dilapidated buildings. No, Slovenia is gorgeous. It's like Yosemite. If you've ever been to Yosemite,
Hmm.
beautiful mountains and pine trees and beautiful streams and lakes and just absolutely gorgeous. And in the capital there of Ljubljana, there's, I don't know, a couple thousand physical merchants that accept
Hmm.
cryptocurrencies. You can go to the
Hmm.
local supermarket. You can go to just about any store, the Burger King there, and you can pay in Bitcoin Cash pretty much everywhere there. And that's
Hmm.
thanks to a company called GoCrypto.com that, again, I helped provide the seed money for them. But they're really doing a great job making making cryptocurrencies usable as currencies across Europe. And they're centered there in Slovenia. But they have lots of merchants across other countries in Europe as well. So, but they're really doing an amazing job.
Hmm. Awesome. Now on my show, it's called the Halving Report. I focus mostly on Bitcoin, but I also talk about other cryptocurrencies and in the macro space as well. Just for my new user or for my new people coming into the space, can you explain the difference between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash?
Yeah, so I'll certainly rile up a lot of people by saying this, but Bitcoin
Hmm.
Cash works the way the original Bitcoin did, and then the thing that everybody's calling Bitcoin today, that's 50 something $1,000. It's a brand new coin with a totally new coin characteristics and user experience, and to show that anybody actually, if you guys email me at free@bitcoin.com, I'll send anybody that emails and mentions this show, I'll send you $1 of Bitcoin Cash. That $1 US dollar too, not even Canadian. So US dollar, which is worth more at the moment. That might become worth as much as 1,000 US dollars worth of Bitcoin Cash at some point.
Hmm.
But why it's so important? Like, yeah, it's $1. It's what's amazing isn't that it's a lot of money. It's that it's a small amount of money,
Hmm.
and you can't do that with Bitcoin. It's impossible
Hmm.
to send a new user of Bitcoin one single dollar worth of Bitcoin. You can only
Hmm.
do it using a custodial platform. But
Hmm.
if you're using a custodial platform, you've missed the entire point of Bitcoin.
Hmm.
And you'll hear a lot of people say, "Oh, well, you can use the Lightning Network." Those people are mistaken. In order to use the Lightning Network, you have to have at least one on-chain Bitcoin transaction, which is going to cost you, $10 or $15 to do it. So it's absolutely impossible to give a new person to Bitcoin $1 single worth of Bitcoin, but you can still do that with Bitcoin Cash. And so from 2011, when I got involved in Bitcoin, up until, I don't know, 2015, 16, 17, when the fees became too high, every single person I would ever meet, I would give them $1 worth of Bitcoin. Today, that's not possible to do. So I'm doing it with Bitcoin Cash today. So if you want your dollar of Bitcoin Cash, email free@bitcoin.com, mention this episode, and I'll send you $1 of Bitcoin Cash.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Now, when I think of Satoshi Nakamoto, I don't have a face to a name. When I think of Bitcoin Cash, I think of Roger Ver. Do you see that as a flaw in Bitcoin Cash, and how dependent is Bitcoin Cash on you?
So in the old days, people saw the face of Bitcoin as me in 2011, 12, 13. Like I was the loudest and one of the only ones out there cheering for Bitcoin. And so you would see me on CNN and Fox News and all these different places promoting Bitcoin. And so to a large extent, the two faces of Bitcoin were myself and Andreas Antonopoulos. Today, Andreas is doing his own thing, and I think he kind of chickened out, to be honest, and decided to say what was popular rather than what was true. And myself, I chose to say what was true rather than what was popular. Bitcoin Cash is an amazing tool to bring more economic freedom to the world. Bitcoin, not so much at the moment. So yeah, I'm busy doing those things today, and I think that's going to have to continue.
Yeah, no, that's quite interesting. And Andreas, yeah, seems to be very careful about advertising anything outside of Bitcoin and just educating people on Bitcoin. He won't advertise, any type of cold wallet or anything like that. So now you've labeled as Bitcoin Jesus, and ironically, you're an atheist. Do you think you'll ever shake that name, Bitcoin Jesus?
I don't. If I could have I didn't choose that nickname for myself. If I had to choose a nickname at all, and if I could have chosen it, I think probably Bitcoin Johnny Appleseed would have been a little bit more accurate there, because Johnny Appleseed went around the legend anyhow, went around the North America planting apple seeds, and today all those seeds grew up into trees, and everybody gets to benefit from apples. So I kind of did the same thing with cryptocurrency. I planted all these seeds of cryptocurrency around the world, and now it's grown up, and it's this worldwide, $1 trillion+ movement around the world. So it's pretty neat to see those seeds bearing fruit, so to speak.
Yeah. Now, Bitcoin hitting $1 trillion asset, was that a big deal to you?
Yeah, I think it felt a lot more exciting when Bitcoin hit $30 for the first time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I remember. Wow. It was just in the course of just a couple of weeks, it went from like $2 to $30. And that was the first time there was like a major price movement. And that was like, kind of felt like, yeah, this is real. This is really happening. And then maybe I got a similar feeling again when it hit $1,000 for the first time in 2013. And then every big giant price uptick since then, it hasn't had the same amount of excitement, I guess. I guess it's just kind of like when you're a kid. When you're 4 years old, Christmas is the most exciting thing ever. When you're 5, it's still pretty darn good. And like the older you get, the less exciting it becomes. And by the time you're 40-something, it's okay, it's Christmas, right? Okay, Bitcoin's 50K, Ethereum's almost 2K. Like, okay, that's nice. But
right. So like, what about Elon Musk joining in and purchasing, adding Bitcoin to their Tesla cash to the reserves? Was that a big ordeal then? Like, because he's the richest person and one of the most influential?
I think that's fantastic. The more people that get involved in cryptocurrency, the better. And certainly Elon Musk is somebody who has the ability to move the needle a substantial amount. Yeah.
Now I'm just curious, because we've mentioned Canada a couple of times. Have you been to Canada? What's your experiences in Canada?
I wish I could say every Canadian I've ever met is always been so nice and so polite, and so definitely living up to the stereotype. But I wish I could say the same thing about the Canadian immigration authorities. I didn't make a big deal about this publicly because I'd never ever been to Canada in my life ever. Really? But in I don't know 2014, 15, 16, I forget exactly what year now. There was a scaling Bitcoin conference in either Montreal or Quebec, or I forget exactly. Maybe it was Toronto. I can't remember which city anymore. But I applied for a visa to be able to go to visit Canada. to go to the Scaling Bitcoin conference. It was like a 2 or 3 day conference, and I have it in writing from the Canadian immigration authorities that they denied my visa because they were concerned about my future job prospects in my home country. So I think they just plain didn't bother to read my application very closely. I'm pretty confident in my future job prospects. So they didn't give me a visa to go to the conference in Canada, and I've never been to Canada to this very day. But maybe someday they'll change their mind.
Is that a deal breaker for you? Will you apply again?
There's another conference or something. Yeah, maybe I'll give it a try at some point, and again in the future. We'll see. So.
Okay, you let me know. I'll be there. So it seems like a lot of exchanges out there today, tout themselves as #1 cryptocurrency exchange. So I want to ask you, how does your company approach the security of its users, and what makes it different from other platforms?
Yeah, so we have a lot of different products, but one of the things that I think I'm the most excited about philosophically are these non-custodial financial services. So an example of a custodial financial service is your Bank of Canada or whatever you guys use there, or in America, Chase Bank or Bank of America. And the more assets those institutions have on deposit, the more of an attractive target they are for regulators and hackers and everybody else. The same is true of Coinbase. The more people that deposit their Bitcoin at Coinbase, the more attractive of a target Coinbase becomes for hackers or for governments to regulate things. That's a problem. With the Bitcoin.com wallet, each individual user has their Bitcoins themselves, and there's no central entity that's holding everybody's Bitcoin. So it doesn't become nearly as juicy of a target for hackers to attack or bad things to happen, because it's just each individual has however much cryptocurrency on their phone, and there's millions and millions of different users. We have multiple millions of monthly active users with the Bitcoin.com wallet. It's really amazing how popular it's become. And if I can pitch this one new feature we just launched recently, it's called the shareable link, and you can send the private keys from one wallet to another via URL. So you can paste that URL into any chat app that allows you to send a link, whether it's Facebook or WhatsApp or Telegram or Signal or you name it. You can send Bitcoin Cash if you can send a link. And these are all on-chain, uncensorable transactions. It's really a big deal. We've just really seen people take off using that more and more and more. And I'm using that all the time too, to send money to people using Bitcoin Cash. So anyhow, I'm a big fan of these non-custodial financial services because it puts the users in charge of their own money, and there's no central institution. Of course, other big examples of that are all these DeFi platforms as well. Just really amazing how much traction they're getting, and there's no central authority there running the show, and it's really a fun thing. And so, if I can sidetrack ever so slightly, I remember watching a YouTube video a long time ago of the Free State Project members in New Hampshire, and they were having, I think it was the 420 smoke out or something, and they were doing it publicly in a park, saying marijuana should be legalized. And it was just a bunch of people in Canada. Yeah, you guys are ahead of the curve on that one. But it was so funny. Like the police showed up one day and they were mad because there were like 100 people there, and maybe a dozen of the people were actually smoking pot, and the others were there just showing their support. And the police said, "Who's in charge here?" And I think all the adults had come up with the answer ahead of time. But when the police were asking, like, "Who's in charge here?" somebody's like 2-year-old kid was there at the event, and all the adults would point to the 2-year-old kid and say he's in charge. The police didn't know what to do because all the adults are saying the 2-year-old kid is in charge. Of course, the 2-year-old isn't in charge, but that's kind of the whole point of some of these movements, is that things are better when nobody's in charge. We want rules, but we don't want rulers that can arbitrarily change the rules at any time. And so all this DeFi and cryptocurrency stuff is an example of having rules without rulers. And when you have rules without rulers, the whole system is fair for everybody, and it leads to wonderful results.
Now, just kind of talking about, I guess, your libertarian philosophies a little bit. Are we in a state where, do you see any scenario where we need some sort of government regulations on capitalism at all? Or are you totally let the free market go? You see some people criticize for unfettered capitalism, whether it be, oil companies polluting or Coca-Cola selling sugar to children. How far do you go in that philosophy, and just maybe trying to help people, maybe novices with that philosophy, understand where you're coming from?
Yeah, the philosophy is actually pretty simple. It's that anybody should be allowed to do absolutely anything that's peaceful. And if you're going to be using violence against peaceful people, you're the criminal aggressor, and you need to stop. So you can look at any situation out there and think, okay, is it okay to use violence to stop whatever's going on? It's like, let's say your neighbor is giving their kids Coca-Cola with lots of sugar in it, would you feel comfortable using violence against your neighbor to prevent them from letting their kids drink Coca-Cola? Probably not. And so if you're not willing to use violence against people to prevent something or to compel something, it shouldn't be a law. And it's like another example of that. In the US, there's this thing called Social Security. Would you be willing to force your neighbor to save for their own retirement and threaten them with violence if they don't? Probably not. So why would it be okay when the government does the same thing, especially when they call all the people in government representatives? How can a representative have the ability to do things that those he claims to represent don't have the ability to do themselves? So if you can't force your neighbor to save for his retirement, why can your representative do something that you can't? He's certainly not really a representative at that point. He's your master, and it's just a Orwellian doublespeak to call these people representatives. So to answer your question, let people do anything that's peaceful, and if it's not peaceful, you can use defensive violence to stop it. So and in regards to pollution, that's a pretty clear violation of property rights. So if you own something and someone's polluting on it, I think you should be able to stop them from polluting on it. But that's and if you look around the world, the worst polluters by far are the governments around the world and the militaries. I look at there's a whole bunch of nuclear waste in Nevada and other places, and they're dropping nuclear test bombs, and you can't use the places for forever. The governments are the biggest polluters by far. So if you want to stop pollution, I don't think asking the governments to do it's the right way to achieve your goals.
Recently, I've seen Kim.com join the Bitcoin Cash. I don't know how long he's been involved, but maybe you could talk about your relationship with Kim.com and his initiative with Bitcoin Cash now.
Yeah, I've had quite a few conversations with him now. It's more his story to tell than mine, but long story short, and I think he'd be just fine with me sharing this, is everybody knows him for his Mega Upload and Mega.com file sharing platforms there, that at one point, I forget the exact number, but I think it accounted for 6% of global internet traffic of all bandwidth, which is really, really amazing. And so he was planning to relaunch that on the domain name k.im, right? And he wanted to build it all on top of Bitcoin. And then he was looking into Bitcoin and saw the fees were too high. And then he tried to build it using Lightning Network. And that is just a mess that's perpetually 18 months away. And it was technologically impossible for him to build it on Lightning Network and get it to work. So then he started looking more and more into other coins, and somehow he came across Bitcoin Cash. And actually I'd been tweeting at Kim.com about Bitcoin way back in 2012. And so somehow he came across me, and we had a couple of talks. And then eventually he decided that Bitcoin Cash actually is the version of Bitcoin that can scale to become money for the entire world, and is the version of Bitcoin that could actually work for this type of website that he wants to build. So now he's busy rebuilding his, Mega Upload version 3.0. And it's going to use Bitcoin Cash for the payments for it, because it can scale to handle all the payments and scale to be money for the world. And so it's really amazing, because he's such an excellent public speaker and such a sharp mind, and a successful businessman as well, with a proven track record. So it's really neat to see people like him getting involved in Bitcoin Cash. And I think we'll see more and more entrepreneurs with proven track records really come out in a big way in favor of Bitcoin Cash, because it just plain works. At the end of the day, all the marketing in the world doesn't do you any good if the product has a bad user experience. Bitcoin Cash has a fantastic user experience.
Now, I've heard you talk about Bitcoin Cash's ability to, keep users' anonymity. And right now, it feels like in cryptocurrency, users can transact anonymously with confidence. Do you think cyberpunks will always be ahead of the game on this front, or do you think governments will be able to track your financial transactions?
Yeah, I wish I knew is the honest answer. It's always an arms race there. And the downside is, with the government trying to spy on everybody, you don't know exactly what they're able to do, because they keep it secret, which is another just crazy thing. Everybody teaches you in civics class in the US, and I assume Canada as well, is that, oh, you have to vote for this person, this and that, and government has the consent of the governed. Well, if you look at it, and we saw through Edward Stone, the government's keeping secret all sorts of stuff they're doing. And if they're taking your tax dollars and keeping secret from you what they're doing with it, how can they possibly have your consent? How can they have the consent of the governed if they're keeping secret from everybody what exactly they're doing? And so that's the downside of the privacy, is we don't know exactly how much they're able to spy. And everybody thinks Monero is very, very private, and we hope that it is. But if the government was able to spy on all your Monero transactions, they're not going to tell you. They're just going to be quiet, and they're going to keep spying, and they're going to keep collecting their taxes and using those tax dollars against the people that they claim to represent. So yeah, we don't know, but it's a constant battle, and I'm a big fan of cash fusion. If you look at the mathematics behind cash fusion, there's more, every cash fusion that goes through, there's more potential combinations of a way your Bitcoin Cash was shuffled up than there are atoms in the entire universe. And so breaking the math directly on that seems almost impossible. If they're able to crack that and de-anonymize that, it'll be through some other way. And that's how it usually is. They don't break the encryption directly. They put some backdoor to steal your keys or some sort of other, key logger or screen capture, stuff on there. So it's just a constant battle, and you never know what the spies are able to actually spy on. And you just have to do the best practices you can along the way.
And I think I've seen maybe within the last couple of months, there was a bounty to crack the Monero blockchain. I'm not sure. Are you aware of that, or what's happening contemporary?
Yeah, I think it was the IRS or some U.S. agency put out, like, I don't know, a $500,000 bounty to crack Monero's privacy. And if I can put on my conspiracy theory hat here, first of all, it's not their money that they're offering. It's money that they either print or they take from other people in the form of taxes. So they don't care, $1 million, $1 billion, it's not their money anyhow. So they can offer as much as they want. But if I wanted to put on my extra devious, government agent hat, let's say that I had cracked Monero and I can spy on every Monero transaction and see what's going on, I would absolutely put a bounty out there. Oh, we want someone to crack Monero for us so we can spy on it. And then all the Monero users would be, yeah, look, they put out a bounty. They can't spy on us at all. We can keep going and doing whatever we want with Monero. When in reality, that was just like a trick that the government used to trick all the Monero users into thinking that their transactions are private, so they can keep spying on them and doing their their spying stuff that we know they do, thanks to people like Edward Snowden exposing it.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of Edward Snowden. Permanent Record was so eye-opening. I love that book. I would love to talk to him one day too.
Well, you have to ask. You never know what'll happen if you don't ask. So.
I know. Are there any differences between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash when it comes to the halving?
The halvings are almost identical. The biggest difference in that respect at the moment is the difficulty adjustment algorithm for Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash is a bit different now. Bitcoin Cash, the difficulty adjusts effectively after every block, whereas with Bitcoin, it's after every, 2012 blocks, or I forget, the 2016 blocks or something like that. And so that's about the only difference at the moment. And maybe one will happen a week or two before the other, but not much major difference other than that.
So you see them always being, within sync within a few weeks or months.
Yeah, although you never know what's going to happen. In 2011, never in my wildest dreams did I ever think that Bitcoin would technologically be prevented from scaling to be money for the world. That just seemed unimaginable. And so that just shows just how hard the future is to predict. And so you never know what's going to happen.
Like, are you talking like right in the first layer of software, or like what?
Yeah, so we're already seeing right now today, Bitcoin Cash processes more transactions on chain every day than Bitcoin does. That's already happening right now, which proves that the whole narrative that, Bitcoin can't scale on chain and keep the fees low, that was whether it was an intentional lie or an unintentional lie, it was still a lie, or it was still false. And so the fact that that's already going on Bitcoin Cash today just shows that Bitcoin could have scaled bigger than it is today. There's still room to argue as to exactly how much bigger, but it certainly could have scaled some. And the community, through a bunch of censorship and propaganda and DDoS attacks and Sybil attacks and all sorts of crazy shenanigans that someone really needs to write a full book on someday. Bitcoin was prevented from scaling to be money for the world, and the entire narrative changed for Bitcoin. It's now just supposed to be a store of value and a digital commodity, which interestingly enough is the exact same stance that the IRS has for Bitcoin, that the IRS came out with in, I think, 2014. And at the time the IRS came out with that proclamation, everybody thought, the IRS is retarded. Of course, Bitcoin is money. It's not a commodity. But sure enough, for whatever reason, and, put on your conspiracy theory hat, maybe it was government subversion. Maybe it was just a bunch of people thought it was actually a good idea. But Bitcoin was subverted away from being peer-to-peer electronic cash for the world into just being a store of value and some sort of digital commodity. And I think that was a real shame, and it delayed the adoption of cryptocurrencies around the world by years and years and years, if not even more.
There seems to be a lot of Bitcoin OGs, many of the Bitcoin OGs like yourself, the Winklevoss, Eric Voorhees, that, you guys aren't Bitcoin maximalists at all, but Bitcoin maximalism seems to be so rampant within the community. It's a very loud voice still. Do you agree with that? And why do you think that is?
If you look at human nature, people follow the crowd. It's such a peer pressure is so incredibly powerful. And so we saw, I forget the exact date that it took place, maybe in 2015, the biggest discussion platforms for Bitcoin, all of a sudden overnight, they instituted this draconian censorship policy where anybody that said anything in favor of Bitcoin being allowed to be, scaled to be money for the world would have their post deleted and their account banned. And at the time, there was a huge revolt within the Bitcoin community calling for an end to the censorship and for those moderators to step down. But the moderators didn't. They continued to rule with an iron fist. And then what happened is every single person who came to Bitcoin after the censorship had started, they only got to hear one narrative there. And everybody around them was saying one thing. And just like, if you look around the world, everybody that's born into a Christian household, or a Christian country, almost all of them happen to wind up being Christians. If you're born in a Muslim country, almost everybody happens to be Muslim. If you're born, in a Hindu country, you wind up being Hindu. And it's not because Christianity is true or, Islam is true or Hinduism is true. It's just because that's what you heard everybody around you saying. So you believe it too. Just like every little kid believes Santa Claus is real is because everybody around him tells them that. Well, the same was true with the scaling issue in Bitcoin. When you were only allowed to hear everybody around you say one point of view, well, everybody's saying that, I'll believe it too, because that's the only thing that I got to hear, or that's what almost everybody around me was saying. And so that's exactly what went on within Bitcoin and Bitcoin, the whole ecosystem there. So
when did that happen and what platform was that on?
It was two platforms. It was our Bitcoin on Reddit and then bitcointalk.org. And if you look at the traffic stats from back then, our Bitcoin on Reddit had more traffic, where more people were getting their news and their Bitcoin discussion than every single other Bitcoin website combined. It was a really, really, really big deal. So like today, it's not as big of a deal, but the legacy carried over to all these people that came to Bitcoin after the censorship started. A huge number of them, they think, Bitcoin Cash is a scam. Bitcoin was never supposed to have bigger blocks. If you go back and read the original bitcoin.org from the Wayback Machine and go and read the 2011, 12, 13 version of the website, it was very clear. Bitcoin was intended right there on bitcoin.org to scale with bigger blocks to become money for the world, not some store value that you're just supposed to hold and never actually use for anything. So Bitcoin, the goal or the purpose clearly was hijacked. And luckily we have the Internet Archive Wayback Machine where people can go and check the historical details there.
So you don't see any of the scaling solutions for Bitcoin like Segwit or Lightning probable to fix the issue?
Segwit has been around for, several years now. Almost 4 years, coming up on 4 years. It helped a tiny, tiny bit, but the average fee on Bitcoin today was like $15 again. Peer-to-peer electronic cash cannot have a $15 fee. And if Lightning Network was working already, people would be using that. They wouldn't be paying $15 to use Bitcoin. So it's clear that neither of those solved the problem. And what turned out to be Bitcoin's second layer scaling solution were altcoins. It was altcoins and custodial solutions. And Bitcoin could have had all that adoption and all that capital, and the price, instead of being $50,000, maybe it would be $550,000 today. If Bitcoin hadn't lost all this network effect to, a lot of people don't realize it, Vitalik wanted to build Ethereum on top of Bitcoin, but he saw the scaling problems of the Bitcoin, social problems, not technological problems. And so he said, well, I guess I won't build Ethereum on Bitcoin. I'll start my own chain instead. And same with so many other coins out there. All of those sorts of things would have been on top of Bitcoin, but they intentionally crippled its usability by limiting the block size, including all the ICOs. Like there were tokens on Bitcoin way before Ethereum ever even existed. All those ICOs and token sales and all of those things, that all would have happened on Bitcoin if they hadn't intentionally crippled Bitcoin's scaling.
How do you make an ICO on the Bitcoin blockchain? How does that work? Because I know it's ERC20 and Ethereum, but what happens in Bitcoin?
So there was a token protocol on Bitcoin called OmniLayer, and then there were other color coin ones, and Counterparty was another one out there, and there were all these token protocols coming on Bitcoin. And then Counterparty was really starting to get some traction. And then what the Bitcoin core developers intentionally did is they shortened the amount of data that you could include in the op return on Bitcoin, which basically just destroyed Counterparty's usability. there. And it's like you can still move Tether. A lot of people don't realize this. Maybe everyone is using Tether on, ERC20 tokens or Tron TRC20 tokens there. But Tether started out as a token on top of Bitcoin, and you can still send and receive Tether tokens on Bitcoin today if you want to pay the high Bitcoin fees. But it's one of the options. If you log into your Bitfinex account, you can see Tether as you can see the transport layer. You can do Tether on Ethereum, of course, Tron, Bitcoin Cash. But Bitcoin, that was the original one. You could move Tether tokens. So anyhow, all of that got disrupted as well by the scaling problems that Bitcoin ran into. And again, I want to emphasize they were social problems, not technical problems.
Like even for myself, like I came into the space in 2017, so it was kind of right when I guess Bitcoin Cash occurred. Can you just give my listeners, people that are coming into the space brand new, what happened in 2017 and the coming of Bitcoin Cash?
Yeah.
I know it's a lot, but maybe just like a brief description. Like
a lot happened. Yeah, I'll try and have a really condensed version. So basically, what had happened is there was this giant argument within the ecosystem there as to what the best way to scale Bitcoin was. And one camp wanted this slight technological change to Bitcoin called segregated witness, or SegWit for short. And the other camp just wanted to make the blocks bigger to accommodate more transactions. So the compromise that seemed to have been agreed between both those camps and the people that wanted bigger blocks are like, let's make the maximum block size, 8 megabytes, 20 megabytes, 32, something like that. And the SegWit people were like, no, we just want SegWit. And so the compromise that was reached is that, okay, we'll implement SegWit on Bitcoin and we'll increase the block size. Even though everybody wanted 8 or 20 megabytes from the big block camp, they agreed, okay, we'll upgrade the block size from 1 megabyte to 2 megabytes and we'll implement SegWit. And so that was the compromise. And you had like 99% of the ecosystem, 99% of the hash rate. You really had, basically every major business in the ecosystem had agreed to do SegWit plus a 2 megabyte increase there. And then for whatever dumb reason, and I wasn't directly there in that meeting for other reasons, and I don't know why people agreed to it, they somehow, for some reason, agreed to allow the SegWit part of this upgrade to happen first. And then the 2 megabyte upgrade was supposed to happen, I don't know, a month or two later. And so what happened? Everything was going smooth. All the miners were signaling. All the businesses were on board. There was no arguing. Like the community kind of seemed to be back together again and pretty happy with the path. And then the SegWit activated. And then as soon as SegWit activated, all of a sudden, all these people came out from the woodwork there saying, no, 2 megabyte. We're never going to do 2 megabyte. We already got our SegWit, which is what we want. You thought we were going to agree to the 2 megabyte stuff. No. We lied, cheated, and stealed and tricked you guys into getting what we wanted there. And they successfully prevented the 2 megabyte upgrade from happening on Bitcoin. And then once it was and Bitcoin Cash had already existed from the time SegWit came into existence. And I didn't really pay any attention to it at all because I thought the 2 megabyte upgrade was going to go through, which would double, plus the SegWit benefit would more than double Bitcoin's throughput capacity. I thought this is great. Bitcoin is on track to be money for the world. So I didn't pay any attention to Bitcoin Cash until these people successfully doing DDoS attacks on everybody's nodes, DDoSing websites, flooding everybody's email inbox at bitcoin.com and other websites. It was just really atrocious. Even sending SWAT teams to the homes of various people that were on one side or the other of the scaling wars, how vicious it was.
Wow.
And it wasn't until the 2 megabyte part of the upgrade got successfully aborted or scuttled or whatever the word you want to use for that is. That was when I looked around and said, okay, well, I guess Bitcoin's not going to succeed in becoming peer-to-peer electronic cash for the world. What's the next best option? And the next best option at that time, and I think still today, is Bitcoin Cash. And so that's why myself and Bitcoin.com and everything that I have influence over, we started focusing on Bitcoin Cash at that point, because I'm interested in peer-to-peer electronic cash for the world, where every single individual has complete control over their own money, and you don't need a Coinbase or a Cash App or some custodian to hold your Bitcoin for you, because if you actually tried transacting in it directly, you'd lose $15 every transaction. That's like trying to use ice cubes as money. They don't last very long. And every time you hand it off, it's smaller than before. That's what Bitcoin is like at this point, whereas Bitcoin Cash is fantastic.
Now, you obviously get a lot of slack thrown at you on, just because of the Bitcoin maximum narrative out there. What's the best argument you've heard against Bitcoin Cash?
I think the best argument against Bitcoin Cash is that the hash rate is lower than Bitcoin. And so that does make it easier for a malicious miner to attack or cause problems for Bitcoin Cash. But the empirical evidence for that actually happening is pretty darn low. They've both existed for years now, and that hasn't happened. And you have an even better example of that, I think, are all the GPU mineable coins. There have been a few attacks with reorgs. It's happened to Bitcoin Classic once or twice, and maybe some other coins out there as well. But it happens very, very, very rarely. And usually the coins that it does happen to, they don't have the same sort of rolling 10 block checkpoint that Bitcoin Cash has. So even if you're scared of a reorg on Bitcoin Cash, as long as you have 10 confirmations, it's impossible for there ever to be a reorg more than 10 blocks deep. So I don't see it as that big of a problem. But that's the strongest argument that I think there is against Bitcoin Cash. But from an end user's perspective, the transactions are faster, cheaper, more reliable than Bitcoin transactions. Like I don't think you can argue against that. So,
have you been taking part of the digital art boom that's been happening on the Ethereum network?
No, I don't even know what you said. Digital harpoon, or what was it?
Oh, sorry, digital art boom.
Oh, digital art boom.
I got Invisalign, so I sometimes slur and have a little bit of a lisp now, so I apologize.
I didn't know what a digital harpoon was. That sounds exciting as well. I have seen some of the digital art boom stuff that's going on, and some of that's happening on Bitcoin Cash as well. That you can do NFT tokens on both. And actually, one of the businesses that I invested in that I'm excited to see happen is doing NFTs. It's a Sweet.io is another fun one that's doing celebrity NFT stuff. So I haven't participated directly. I'm not nearly as excited about it as lots of other people seem to be. But we'll see what happens.
You were one of the first people that I came across in this space. Very influential for me. And the quote that you have in your display picture, I'm going to read it off. And when I realized that Bitcoin has the potential to undermine every government on the entire planet's ability to wage war, I knew that I had to get involved in Bitcoin and start promoting it full time. Can you explain, how Bitcoin and crypto undermine government's ability to wage war, and how you came to that realization?
If as a Canadian, it's not as bad of a problem as it is for Americans. Like the US government has two ways that it funds all these wars. And the main way is through just plain printing money. They print money and then they use it to buy guns and bombs and tanks and airplanes and then drop those bombs on foreign people in foreign countries. I want absolutely nothing to do with any of that. And so if the entire world starts using something other than the US dollar, it'll take away the U.S. government's ability to just print money to fund, the warfare state around the world that they have going on. And then on top of that, if you have the entire world using actual peer-to-peer cash where they have custody of their own funds, it'll make it so that tax collectors have to be much, much more honest about what they're trying to collect taxes for. And it'll give people the ability to, even if they wind up going to jail, they still have the ability to say no, that they mathematically, it's impossible to see someone's money if they're using peer-to-peer cash. If they're using a digital store of value and they have to use a custodian to hold it for them, the IRS or any other agency can still come right in there and take all the funds. But if you're using peer-to-peer cash, it makes it so that taxation becomes a lot more voluntary, because people will be able to see exactly where their money is headed towards, and provides a lot more transparency into how government is using those funds. And then on top of that, it can make warfare a bit fairer, I suppose. So let's say the US starts saber rattling, they're going to invade some other, random country somewhere in the world, using guns and bombs and tanks. It's kind of impossible for that other country to defend themselves. But using a bounty of cryptocurrency, they could put a bounty on the foreign head of state and kind of even up the playing field in that perspective there too, which may make it a bit more of a mutually assured destruction, where maybe it'll be too dangerous for the head of one state to invade another state, because the smaller state can say, okay, well, we don't have $1 billion to, or billions of dollars to build a big military with guns and bombs and tanks, but we can put up a $10 million bounty on the life of the other guy that's threatening to invade us. And I hope that people will only use this defensively. And that would be my, ideal world, is just use this as a defensive tool. But you never know. The world's a crazy place out there with lots of crazy people. But it certainly makes war a lot more dangerous and a lot more costly for the heads of states that want to engage in that. And I think the more dangerous war becomes directly for the heads of state that want to engage in that war, the less likely that war is to take place. So there's a lot of different fronts where cryptocurrency can help reduce the amount of conflict and war in the world.
Yeah, no, definitely. And as a younger person coming out of school, I was really against like banks and like how they kind of take advantage of the average person. And so when I heard of Bitcoin, it just spoke to my heart. And your quote kind of like really speaks to me in that regard. Roger, just fast round questions. Do you have a favorite book, or you want to mention one of your favorite books?
Yeah, there's so many. I guess I just want to recommend books in general, because
Yep.
anytime you read any book, it's like you're getting a one-on-one tutoring session from some of the smartest human beings to have ever lived in all of human history. And so what could be better than that? For like $10, you can get a one-on-one tutoring lesson from some of the smartest people ever. And so one book that really I really actually like, and I'm thinking of doing some interesting things to promote it, but Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt is a fantastic book. And another one that, in fact, the quote I thought you were going to read from my Twitter profile, you read the quote from me, but the background and the main thing is a quote from Frederick Bastiat, who was a French economist who wrote a book called The Law, and he wrote several other books that are also fantastic as well, Economic Sophisms, and a couple of others out there. Anyhow, his quote is that it's not from the benevolence of the butcher or baker that we expect our daily bread, but from his regard for his own self-interest. And that's kind of an old-fashioned English way of saying that, like, the local supermarket doesn't care about you. They care about themselves, but because they care about themselves and they're trying to help themselves, they help you and they have all this food available for you to buy. And it's the same with any business anywhere. And so anytime you allow anybody to be able to trade with anybody else, both people are better off after the trade takes place. Otherwise, the trade wouldn't happen. And so the more trade we can enable and facilitate, and the more tools we can build to make it easier for people to trade with each other, the better off every single person on the entire planet becomes because of that trade. And cryptocurrencies are one of the very best tools to help enable that free flow of trade and goods and ideas and capital across the world. So that's another fantastic book I would recommend, is The Law by Frederick Bastiat.
You're such a big influential figure in the Bitcoin and crypto space. Are there any figures that you look up to in this space?
Yeah, I really have wonderful things and feelings towards Gavin Andreessen and Mike Hearn. And so Gavin was the person that when Satoshi disappeared, he turned over the project to. And today he's one of the people that all these Bitcoin maximalists absolutely demonize and claim like he's some bad guy. But Bitcoin grew and got more adoption percentage-wise across the world when it was under Gavin's stewardship than it's been since it's been under the Bitcoin Core and Blockstream and that group. And so he really did an amazing job. And there's a great quote from him in 2017. He said that Bitcoin Cash is what he started working on in 2010, both a store of value and a medium of exchange. And so I thought that was a really powerful quote from the guy that Satoshi left the project with. So
when I talk to people about Bitcoin predictions, often people quote the stock to flow model. Are you familiar with this model, and do you see it as something that's possibly accurate?
The stock to flow model with Bitcoin?
Yeah.
I think it's a figure, but it's not the only figure, right? It's just one data point, and there's a lot of data points out there. And I think I saw some meme floating around yesterday. It was a picture of Bill Gates, and he was reading a book that was called How to Lie with Statistics. And certainly there's some of that can be done too with statistics. Like you can't infer everything from one single data point.
Roger, I'm going to thank you for your time. That's it for me. If you have any questions or comments, feel free. If not, I'll let you go.
Yeah, and if everybody likes Brad's content here, make sure you like and subscribe and share this video on your own social media, because the YouTube algorithms are crazy, and a lot of times they don't promote really actually good content, and they promote like crazy, crypto scam content stuff. And again, don't forget to email me at free@bitcoin.com, and I'll send you that $1 of Bitcoin Cash. And thank you for the opportunity today, Brad. I appreciate it.
Ba-bam! Another episode of the Halving Report is in the books. Did you like today's content? Please subscribe to us on the podcast platform of your choice. Hit the thumbs up button, and we'll see you back next time.